What if I told you that Stellantis, the company behind some of the most iconic American brands like Dodge and Jeep, is quietly moving vehicle production overseas, particularly to China? Not only are they producing vehicles like the Dodge Journey and the Dodge Attitude in China, but they're also exporting these cars to other markets like Mexico, taking away American jobs in the process. Today, we're going to dive into Stellantis' strategy, their growing reliance on China for vehicle production, and what this means for the American workforce and the UAW. Why is Stellantis turning its back on US manufacturing and choosing to build these vehicles in other countries? And what does this say about the future of American jobs in the auto industry? If you ever felt powerless dealing with dealerships or corporations when things go wrong with your vehicle, my friends at Gordon & Partners have your back. Whether it's getting justice after a dealership's messing with your money or fighting back when shady practices leave you stranded, my friends at Gordon & Partners are the experts that you need. They helped me recover thousands of dollars from a wire fraud issue with a dealer with my Demon 170, and they can help you out too. So hit my friends up at Gordon & Partners with my special email address, butter@photoinjured.com, and connect with some of the best lawyers in the country. Don't go at it alone. Get the justice that you deserve with my friends at Gordon & Partners. Let's start by looking at the bigger picture with Stellantis. The parent company of Dodge, Jeep, Ram, and Chrysler is implementing a clear strategy, one that moves production away from the United States and into the cheaper markets like China. A prime example of this is the Dodge Journey, which was introduced in 2020 for the Mexican market. But there's a catch. It was not built in the United States or even in North America. It was built in China by GAC, which is Guangzhou, whatever you want to call it, Automotive Group, and rebranded as a Dodge from Mexico. But my over 35,000 friends and the said 1% not yet subscribed, now Stellantis is following the same playbook with the new Dodge Attitude, another vehicle built entirely in China by GAC. Stellantis is not just outsourcing production for a small niche vehicle, we're talking about key models in their lineup being built on the other side of the world. And these cars are being sold to markets like Mexico, which once relied heavily on US built vehicles, but not anymore. Why is this significant? Stellantis has a long history of building vehicles in the United States, where unionized labor under the UAW played a major role in producing iconic vehicles like the Ram 1500, the Jeep Wrangler, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Grand Wagoneer. But now the company moves more and more production overseas, especially to China. It is clear that they are cutting out American workers in favor of cheaper labor elsewhere. So let's take a closer look at the Dodge Attitude itself. Now, the Dodge Attitude is a compact sedan based on one of the GAC's already existing vehicles, the Trumpchi Impal, a Chinese model. Now, Stellantis is essentially rebranding this particular Chinese vehicle as a Dodge and selling it in Mexico, just like they did with the Journey, the Dodge Journey they introduced back in 2020 that I talked about a little bit earlier. Now, this new 2025 Dodge Attitude will be available in 3 trims, SXT, Sport, and GT, and is powered by a 1.5-liter turbocharged engine sourced directly from China, which delivers 168 horsepower and 184 foot-pounds of torque. The Attitude's key selling point is that it is very affordable. It is priced competitively in Mexico, starting at around $23,000 USD when you convert it over for the base model and going up to nearly $29,000 USD for the top of the line GT trim. Now, this is very interesting because you have over here in America, Dodge apparently does not know how to make very cheap vehicles over here because none of the new ones are cheap. We got the Charger Daytona EV, one of them starting off around $65,000. You got the Charger Daytona RT, one of them starting off in the mid $50,000 range. You had the brand new Dodge Hornet. That's one of the worst selling vehicles in America. That vehicle starts off in around the $30,000 range and tops off in the $50,000 range. But Mexico is getting all these cheap vehicles, but Americans are not. Is this Stellantis' way of saying that they don't like Americans? Because the Durango, not the Durango, but the Dodge Journey in Mexico is in the $20,000 K range. And then now this new Dodge Attitude is in the $20,000 K range. And only Americans get more expensive vehicles, which kind of seems as though if the UAW might be right, that Stellantis is trying to sabotage Americans by having them not want to buy American-built vehicles to kind of incentivize them or make it seem as though they had to take vehicles overseas for them to be cheaper. Now, what's important to realize is that here Stellantis is choosing to produce vehicles like the Attitude and the Journey in China, not in the US or even in Mexico where it'll be sold. By producing it in China, they're taking advantage of a lower production cost while cutting out American jobs in the process. This is not just an isolated decision for the Attitude, it's part of a larger trend where Stellantis is moving more and more production outside the United States. I've already talked about earlier in one video where they're moving overflow Ram trucks to Mexico. I've already talked about another video where the new replacement to the Durango is going up into Canada with Unifor, where they're stacking one plant with 4 different models. You got Windsor making basically the Charger Daytona electric vehicle, the Charger gasoline vehicle. They're making the Pacifica there, and now they're going to be making the next gen Durango there that we don't know what's going to be the new name for it, or we're not going to carry the same name. And then don't forget that Chrysler is still going to have an electric vehicle coming out at their Windsor that they still haven't decided whether it's going to be like the Airflow or 300 replacement. So you can see how the UAW is starting to get screwed over time with Stellantis choosing to move models overseas or either in another country or across the border. This shift in production isn't just happening with the Dodge Attitude. Like I said, Stellantis has been systematically moving production of other key vehicles outside the United States. I mean, I've already given you some clear examples. Like I said, the Dodge Journey, which I mentioned earlier, is built in China and exported to Mexico. This was once built in North America, but Stellantis chose to move it overseas and have Chinese people build it. Now the Grand Cherokee L, which has historically been built in Detroit, is now being partially produced in Egypt for the Middle East and the African regions. Again, we see Stellantis outsourcing production to cheaper labor markets. Now, why is this happening? It all comes down to cost. By producing vehicles in China, Stellantis can cut labor costs significantly because Chinese workers earn a fraction of what UAW workers in the US make. And with fewer regulations and lower production costs, Stellantis is able to maximize its profits. But this comes at a steep cost to American jobs. What is also troubling is that Stellantis isn't keeping production local to the markets where these vehicles are being sold. Instead of building the Attitude in Mexico where it will be sold, Stellantis is opting for a cheaper route, producing the vehicle in China and shipping it across the world. This not only takes away jobs from American workers, but also from the Mexican workers who could be building these cars locally. And they also do the same thing with the Dodge Hornet. The Dodge Hornet is built in Italy and shipped over here to America. So what does this mean for American jobs? It is no secret that the UAW is already facing challenges as more automakers shift to electric vehicles and looking for ways to cut costs. But Stellantis' decision to outsource vehicle production to China adds another layer of difficulty for the UAW and its members. Historically, vehicles like the Dodge Journey and the Jeep Grand Cherokee were built in the United States by unionized labor. These vehicles provided stable, well-paying jobs for American workers. But as Stellantis shifts production to countries like China, these jobs are disappearing. And with more and more vehicles being built outside the United States, the UAW is losing its influence over production process. Let's also not forget the environmental and logistical implications of shipping vehicles halfway across the world. By building vehicles in China and exporting them to places like Mexico, Stellantis is creating a complex and resource-intensive supply chain that stretches across the globe. This raises questions about sustainability and the long-term impact on the environment. Because if it's supposed to be about going dare forward and save the environment, and we're supposed to go electric vehicles to save the environment, then why are you shipping vehicles halfway across the world and not locally? right? Wasn't Stellantis one excuse for building the Grand Cherokee L in Egypt was because they wanted to build that vehicle locally? That way they can have it closer to where it's going to be serving the market at. So why is Stellantis doing this for other brands and making excuses, right? Why isn't the Dodge Hornet not made in America if that car is basically exclusively for sale in America, and the Tonale version is supposed to be mostly being bought in Europe with a little bit of sales in the United States? Why is it that, you know, the Dodge Journey is made in China and shipped across seas to Mexico? Why isn't it not built in Mexico? I mean, there's already production plants there in Mexico to build vehicles. Why is this Dodge Attitude being shipped from China to Mexico? So it kind of seems as though Stellantis is trying to use these little tactics to say, oh, well, you know, we're a global company, yada, 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 but we're here for the environment. Oh, we're making electric vehicles to give people freedom of mobility, and we're trying to save the environment, blah, 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 blah. Now, the big question is, what is next? Because Stellantis is clearly making a strategic shift away from US production, and they're not alone. Other automakers are also looking at ways to cut costs by outsourcing production to lower cost countries. Now, Stellantis' reliance on China in particular is something that should concern both American workers and consumers. With ongoing tensions between the US and China, this strategy could backfire in the long-term run. Now, trade tariffs and supply chain disruptions and geopolitical conflicts could all make it more difficult for Stellantis to continue relying on China for production. And as for the American workers, the outlook is very grim. As more vehicles are built overseas, the UAW's ability to negotiate for better wages and working conditions will continue to diminish. And with Stellantis focusing more on maximizing profits than on supporting American jobs, the future of US automotive manufacturing is looking increasingly uncertain. So what does all this mean for the future of American jobs and the US automotive industry? Stellantis' decision to build the Dodge Journey and the Attitude and other vehicles in China and export them to other markets is a clear sign that the company is prioritizing cost savings over American jobs. The UAW is losing its grip as more production shifts overseas, and this is only just the beginning. Because as I said, you got the Jeep, the Jeep Cherokee going to Egypt. You got overflow for the Ram 1500 going to Mexico. You got the Durango moving over into Canada. You got Brampton supposed to be making another Jeep vehicle over there in Canada. I mean, really, you only have a handful of vehicles that's actually made in the United States anymore. I mean, what's going to be next? Is the Wrangler and the Gladiator going to be moved to China or Mexico, whatever? And they're already having the issues with Belvidere not getting their commitment to make a new Ram mid-sized pickup truck. So it's going to be very interesting to see the next couple of years as this current contract that the UAW historically fought for and won and took it to the man. It's going to be interesting to see how many more vehicles that the UAW loses and Stellantis pops up in places not under UAW control. Now, as consumers, we need to ask ourselves, are we okay with buying vehicles that were built in China or Mexico or Canada while American jobs are being lost? Should automakers be held accountable for outsourcing production, especially when it comes to iconic American brands like Dodge? Because if you guys remember, a few months ago, Italy got pissed off at Stellantis because Stellantis wanted to take one of the Alfa Romeo vehicles, build it in Poland, and instead of building it in Italy, and then outsource it from Poland back into Italy in order to make that vehicle cheaper. Now, that vehicle was called the Alfa Romeo Bolano, but Italy got so pissed off that they applied a law that really only applied to like food or something like that, for the whole thing of you can't have a vehicle that sounded Italian sounding and is not built in Italy. So they applied that ruling to Stellantis, and Stellantis had to change the name of a little compact little SUV from the Alfa Romeo Milano to the Alfa Romeo Junior. It'll be interesting if the US government passes a law similar to what Italy has, to where you cannot make a vehicle or a product or a toy or whatever sound like it's American made if it's not built in America. And that will probably show like a very big shock to people that, hey, this stuff is not made here. People are losing their jobs. Eventually get to the point where nothing is made here. What in the world are we going to have jobs for? What are we going to build if nothing's built in America? Like, how people get employed? So I just want you to think about that. Is it okay that we keep buying vehicles from overseas that's not built by Americans for Americans? Even though you have stuff like the Grand Cherokee L in Egypt being built for Egyptians and other people in Africa. You have, let's see. I mean, there's other brands that are like that, but we need to get to the point to where, are we okay with this being the case? But let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Is Stellantis making the right decision and the right move by outsourcing this vehicle like the Attitude to China, or should they be keeping the jobs in the US or in Canada where we have agreements with them? But let me know what you guys think. If you found this video informative, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest news with Stellantis and the UAW. And as always, until the next time, I'm out.